Hi, and welcome to The Curling Show, the podcast that brings you interviews with the sport's top athletes and the people who shape the game. Brought to you by Local 59 and their line of steel furniture. See it at local59.com. I'm your host, Dean Gemmel, and in this edition we'll be speaking to Cassie Johnson, the skip of the team that will represent the United States at the Olympic Games and the runner-up at last year's Women's World Championships. Thanks for being on the show, Cassie. I appreciate your time. I want to start by asking you a little bit about your off-season. You guys are like a few other teams we've spoken to in that you have members in different parts of the country, and I'm wondering how you guys are communicating, what your training is like during the off-season as you get ready for the Olympic year.
Well, right now we're all scattered all over the U.S. Maureen is down in Madison, Wisconsin, and Jamie and I are here in Bemidji, and then Jess is actually up in Alaska, which is her home state, and then Courtney's over in Duluth. But right now we're basically just training at home, just doing running, staying in shape, going to the weight room, things like that. And we're communicating by email most of the time and a few phone calls just to, let each other know how we're doing. We've kind of set personal goals that we're hoping to reach by the end of the summer when we get together.
Personal fitness goals?
Yeah, we went to the Olympic Training Center at the beginning of the summer and went and talked to their strength training coaches there, and they took measurements and everything of us. We've kind of made personal goals as far as like maybe if we want to trim it like an inch off of our waist, or if we want to lift a certain amount of weight by the end of the summer, or run a certain amount of time without having to fall over.
Right. You guys are, unlike Canada, in the United States here, you're the Olympic team and you were selected last year. You're going to have a full year of preparation. I think that's going to be pretty valuable. How do you feel about having that much time to get ready for the Olympics?
Oh, it's really nice to have because we have a set time when we need to peak then, and it's not just peaking at the Olympic trials, which would have been 4 years ago, and the team would have had to have peaked at the trials as well as at the Olympics then a month later. Instead, now we know that we need to peak just for the Olympics pretty much, and we can set up our schedule then to get that goal pretty much. So we've got quite a few bonspiels that are international, so it'll help us get to that level then at that time.
It's interesting because I spoke to Dave Netowin and Jill Officer, and they both thought that in Canada it wouldn't be a bad idea if the Olympic trials were held the previous year for the reasons I think you just talked about. What sort of schedule is your team planning for next year?
Right now, the first thing that we've got going is kind of a fun spiel in Norway. It's called the Bompy Cup, and that's in the middle of September. And then right after that, the weekend following that, we're staying in Norway, and we're playing in the Oslo Cup, which is a huge international bonspiel. It's a men's side and a women's side. And then in October, right at the beginning, we've got the Calgary Autumn Gold Classic, which is a fairly large bonspiel up there. And then we've got some media things to go over. And then at the end of October, we're going to Winnipeg. And then early November, we're pretty much just practicing then. And then we go to the Duluth Cash Spiel in the middle of November. And then end of November, we've got a spiel in British Columbia, the Weight and Transportation Classic. And then December and January right now, we don't have any bond spiels, but we've got quite a few practices lined up. And we're taking Christmas and Thanksgiving off so that we can be with our families. But that's pretty much our schedule as it is right now.
Is that a bigger cash spiel schedule than you had, say, last year?
It is, definitely. The biggest factor was that we had the funding to do this, this year. Now,
right.
We got money from the Olympic Committee. Years before, since we've all been students, we haven't, had the major careers where we make the big bucks. So we've all had to pay out of our pockets and take time off of school. And this year, everybody is taking a year off from school, except for me. I have only 6 credits to graduate, so I'm going to finish here real quick before we leave for Italy. But that's always been the case in the past, is that it's never been this big of a schedule for us.
Right, so you guys will all take the year off, except you're finishing up probably just a couple classes or something, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Let's talk about your team for a minute. The season you had last year, the success you had at the Worlds, I want to talk a little bit about how young your team is. I mean, you have, Jessica says she just started curling in 1998, in fact. And do you guys see that as an advantage, or you had a lot of success in junior curling, so it's not like you're not used to the world events? But how do you see your age, and when you play against teams that are usually a little bit older?
That's definitely a major difference between our team and other teams out there. Gosh, the only major experience the four of us had, or the five of us had prior to the Worlds, was junior Worlds or junior nationals. But I think, judging from our performance this year, that's been just great for us to have. It might have been a little bit of a help going into Worlds that we were kind of the underdogs, and nobody really expected us to be up there in the semis with everybody, so we weren't probably taken as like one of the toughest competitors until the end of the week, and I think people realized that we were kind of there to be seen and get to the finals. But yeah, gotten that question a lot about how young we are in curling, and a lot of people that watched us on TV and everything even mentioned the fact that, they thought curling was kind of an older sport for older people, and we're just kind of like, yeah, but there's all these juniors coming up, and they've got great potential, and we'll probably be seeing that pretty soon.
Right. I'll be honest, as someone who would love to see the game get bigger in the United States, because I live here now, I'm really happy that you guys are as young as you are at the Olympics, and I certainly don't want to discriminate against anyone else, but I think it'll be much better for the game in this country to have a young team there. So I'm thrilled that you guys are young and you bring a certain young energy to it. Let's talk about the Worlds last year. First, what about the venue? I talked with Jill Officer from Team Jennifer Jones, and they admitted, they didn't have the best week, but the conditions were pretty shaky at times, and I was pretty critical of them. What do you think of the event itself? I mean, certainly the way you guys played would certainly help your opinion of it, but what do you think of the event itself?
Oh, gosh, just being in Scotland there was it was awesome as far as our first Worlds, because that's where curling originated, was actually at the Paisley Abbey there. It was surprising how the ice conditions were at the beginning of the week. They did get gradually better through the course of the week. It was actually pretty frosty, kind of uncertain, each game, how the ice was going to react. And we had a few games where it was very trying, and we had to work with the ice pretty hard to try to figure it out a few games. And it did get to be a little frustrating, but we certainly didn't let it show, because that's the way curling goes. You have to figure the ice in every game, and you never know what's going to happen. But we had a great time, and being a young team and going out there and really figuring that ice out, I think we all felt pretty good about it.
Yeah, and I want full credit to you guys for not letting the ice deter from your performance, because it did seem like it was a trying event in that regard. What about the final? I mean, you had a realistic chance to win. You'd beaten Sweden in the Page game, in the 1-2 game. What did you take away from the loss, which I don't think was heartbreaking, but you were pretty close?
Yeah, definitely not heartbreaking. We were excited going to that game that we had made it that far. Playing against such a tough team, we wanted to just go out there and keep up with them. And obviously we had a couple ends where it was kind of cross your fingers, and we got a couple lucky breaks, but then they ended up coming out in the end. We didn't play as well, I personally feel, that final game. We definitely didn't have the spectacular shots that we did during the week. But I feel that if we came up against them again in the future, that we definitely have a much better game against them, because we had, as you said, in that Page game.
Yeah, I mean, you beat them in the 1-2 game, so it wasn't like they were heavily favored, I don't think. I think it was pretty much even, and you guys held a lead for quite a while. Let's talk a little bit about your family and how important it's been to you in the sport. I mean, your sister plays with you. Your parents were active curlers, probably still active curlers, I guess. How valuable has that been for you, and how important do you think it's been to your success?
The support of my family is what really keeps me going, kind of. Definitely the support of my parents for my sister and I has been tremendous, especially when we're going through school, and they had to pretty much support us money-wise. That was a huge thing. And then to be there and watch our games, as we go to Worlds and the Nationals, it's always great to have fans there, cheering you on. They're pretty die-hard about curling and going to watch us, so it's always great to know that they're there. But really, curling has been in our family for many generations. My great-grandfather actually curled, and my grandparents curled, and numerous other relatives, as well as my parents and sister, way back.
Talk about the difference between being a competitive curler in the United States versus being a competitive curler in Canada, where the game is certainly a lot bigger and gets a lot more attention. What do you think the biggest disadvantage is for you playing in the United States?
I would have to say level of competition at the Bonspiels. For our team to set up a schedule each year and trying to get as best a competition as we can, we find that most fields we end up going to are in Canada because that's where the competition is and that's where the big teams go. The U.S. really doesn't have that kind of support down here to have the Bonspiels that are big money and to attract the larger, the more competitive teams. And that's probably in part to that curling is not real popular down in the States, so we don't get the big sponsors to host those kind of Bonspiels. So that's probably the biggest thing.
What do you think we could do in this country to build the game a little better? How do you think we could promote curling more effectively in the United States?
Gosh, I think just to get it out there, to have people know that it's out there. I've met a lot of people who've never heard of it, and just to meet people that say that they've heard about it is just awesome. I mean, I went out, like vacation this summer, went to on the lake, and there were people there that had heard about it, and that was just great to hear, and they'd actually watched it on TV, so it is getting around. It's not like it was in the past where you'd go and talk about curling, and people have no idea what you're talking about. But I think it's gradually growing, but we just need a little bit more of getting curling out there, like in the news and on TV, and just getting it noticed.
How big is your home club?
I'm not sure what the membership size is, but it's one of the larger ones.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, with 6 sheets of ice. I would say next to Duluth and St. Paul, we're probably one of the top 3 curling clubs in Minnesota, I'd say.
Last question I have is, have you guys selected all your things like wardrobe and stuff for the Olympics? Have you been involved in that?
We haven't actually looked into that too much. We know that we'll be getting outfits from the United States Curling Association.
Are you going to have any input into them?
Gosh, I really don't know. We haven't.
I think you need to ask them that.
Yeah, that'd be great because it's always a huge thing for, especially girls. They want to know what they're going to be wearing out there.
I do think it's crazy that you don't have input in it because you want your athletes to feel comfortable in what they're wearing. I think you guys should have input, so I hope you get some. I really am looking forward to seeing your team do well in Torino. I think you are going to do really well. And I'm excited, to have, like I said, a young team from this country on the Olympic coverage. And I think just your presence and your energy should do a lot for the sport. So not a lot of pressure on you. I'm just expecting you to build the game, that's all. So.
Oh, thank you. We hope to, yeah.
I have a dream to build a Kalamazoo curling club, so, I need a lot of exposure out of the Olympics.
Hopefully we'll get some then.
All right. Well, listen, good luck, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you during the season or after the Olympics.
All right. Thanks for the interview.
Thanks, Cassie.
Yep. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Cassie Johnson on The Curling Show, brought to you by Local 59 and their line of steel furniture, available at local59.com. Thanks for listening. Here's another taste of the pudding.
You know it's hard for me to see things that I cannot find. How can I tell if it's a dream or just all in my mind?